Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what happens when a chaotic, viral internet challenge actually meets a cold, hard scientific lens. Specifically, we're unpacking a pretty wild 30-day experiment documented by fitness creator Jesse James West. He decided to put his own body, and honestly his mind, on the line for science. So we're going to break down every single metric, every struggle he faced, and of course, the ultimate biological results. Let's get right into it.
The entire journey is driven by one huge, fascinating question. What actually happens to a man's testosterone when he completely cuts out instant gratification for 30 straight days? I mean, it sounds simple enough on paper, right? But the physiological and psychological hurdles are just immense. We're going to explore exactly how his body reacted to this sudden, extreme deprivation.
Now, just so we're all on the same page, let's get our definition straight. We're talking about semen retention, which is the practice of avoiding ejaculation entirely. And Jesse makes a very clear distinction here. This isn't just about the internet trend known as NoFap. For him, this challenge was explicitly focused on harnessing physical and mental energy. It's really about taking total control of the body and breaking away from what he calls a modern-day addiction.
So what was the end goal? Well, on day one, Jesse laid out a clear hypothesis. He wasn't just doing this for some vague sense of mental clarity. He was expecting specific, trackable benefits. We're talking improved overall energy, a measurable increase in total testosterone, thicker hair, and greater muscle growth. These are the exact metrics we'll be tracking throughout this explainer. Keep them in mind as we start looking at the numbers.
And speaking of the numbers, look at this baseline. Before even starting, Jesse went to LifeMed at Harvard University to get his blood work done. So here are his actual day one results. His total testosterone was sitting at 476, which, falls perfectly within the normal range of 250 to 1100. But take a look at his free testosterone. That's the active form your body actually uses. It was sitting at 40.7, which is actually just below the normal starting range of 46. So he's starting this whole thing with slightly low active testosterone. This opens up a massive curiosity loop for us. Is this extreme experiment going to help those numbers or completely tank them? To track all this, we've broken his case study down into 4 key phases. We've got the day 1 baseline testing, the day 7 withdrawals, day 14 habit formation, and finally, those day 30 final lab results. Let's walk through exactly how this played out.
Right out of the gate, things got incredibly rough. By day 3, Jesse flew to Miami alone, which, by the way, he called the worst possible place for a challenge like this. The psychological friction was immediate. He actually stated, "I think I'm literally losing my mind. Wish me luck, because this is going to be hard." The intense anxiety and racing thoughts hit him way faster than he anticipated.
To survive these early overwhelming urges, he realized he couldn't just rely on sheer willpower alone. He needed actual biological interventions. Step 1 was implementing a 7-4-8 breathing meditation. So that's inhaling for 7 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 8. This was specifically to stop his racing thoughts and calm that spiking anxiety. Step 2, brisk cold showers to literally shock his system and kill the immediate physical urges. He was actively deploying these coping mechanisms multiple times a day just to survive the first week. But this physical restriction sparked a pretty unexpected psychological realization. Jesse found himself working out in an empty gym and noted a complete shift in his focus. He realized that by escaping what he called the male gaze, that tendency to over-sexualize and constantly look at women in the gym, and by completely removing social media distractions, his productivity absolutely skyrocketed. It wasn't even just about retention anymore. It was about reclaiming all that mental bandwidth usually spent on visual distractions. It allowed him to work substantially harder. And really, that's a massive takeaway any of us can apply when we're trying to reclaim our own focus, right?
Okay, as we hit the midpoint around days 7 and 8, the emotional landscape completely shifted. That initial anxiety and distraction morphed into this intense underlying aggression. He reported feeling a profound sense of frustration, noting, "Every little thing I want to punch a hole in the wall. I'm not normally like this." His body was essentially screaming at him because of the sudden lack of dopamine release, and it was manifesting as pure irritability.
But here is where the experiment gets super fascinating. He took all that newly found, pent-up aggression and channeled it directly into his training. The result? A massive personal record in the gym. He lifted 315 pounds for 13 reps, and he even noted that the weight felt incredibly easy. This was the very first physical clue that his testosterone might actually be peaking, just like his initial hypothesis suggested.
However, it's important to remember this challenge wasn't happening in a vacuum. Returning home meant reuniting with his girlfriend Claudia right as they were celebrating their one-year anniversary. And to make matters comically worse, her anniversary gift to him was a phone case entirely covered in photos of his face. The combination of this big romantic milestone and the persistent temptation made the challenge nearly unbearable. It took a massive, massive toll on his daily comfort.
Then came the breakthrough. Day 14 marked the psychological pivot for the entire experiment. After 2 solid weeks of essentially fighting his own brain, that acute struggle finally transitioned into a manageable routine. It was no longer a constant, exhausting battle of willpower. His brain was actually starting to adapt to the new normal.
You see, he was facing a core internal conflict. On one side, you have instant dopamine, the easy comfort of just quitting, deleting the footage, or even eating massive cheat meals just to feel better instantly. On the other side is long-term discipline. Jesse realized the true goal wasn't just about retention. It was about rewiring his brain away from dopamine dependency entirely. It was about proving he was in control of his actions, not his impulses. Think about it. How often do we all reach for that quick hit of comfort when things get hard, instead of just pushing through the friction?
The proof of this mental rewiring was undeniable. As he noted, I no longer have to take cold showers. I'm able to conquer these feelings. Building internal self-discipline became the primary psychological victory here. He had successfully overridden the intense physical cravings, effectively negating the need for those breathing exercises and cold showers he relied on so heavily during week 1. He was finally driving the car, so to speak. Moving right into week 3, the biological shifts became highly visible. He began waking up naturally at 6 a.m. without an alarm. He experienced a massive surge of morning energy. He naturally increased his morning cardio to 40 minutes simply because he felt so good. And overall, his sudden urges and cravings just plummeted. All signs were pointing towards a major physiological shift actually happening inside his body. But it wasn't a perfect victory. There was a significant, unexpected downside. As those physical cravings plummeted, he noticed a profound loss of intimacy. Without the biological drive, he felt a missing piece in his relationship, a loss of spiritual and emotional connection with his partner. The drive wasn't just about physical gratification for him. It was a core component of his romantic connection, which, at this point, had essentially gone totally dormant. By the time he was crawling toward that day 30 finish line, the mental exhaustion had absolutely peaked. To cope, he wrote this dramatic, donut-fueled breakup letter to the challenge itself, declaring, "Dear retention, I think we need to end things. I don't think we're good together." It's a hilarious look at the kind of mental gymnastics required to sustain this level of extreme deprivation for a full month. But the 30 days finally did end, and now we return to the central premise of our explainer. Did 30 days of extreme discipline, meditation, cold showers, and honestly, mental torture actually change his biology? Jesse headed back to LifeMed to draw blood a second time to find out if the hypothesis held up. Let's look at the results.
Okay, let's look at the hard data. This is incredible. His day 1 total testosterone baseline was 476. On day 30, his final result spiked to 573. That is nearly a 100-point natural increase in just one single month. It definitively proves that the retention protocol had a massive, measurable impact on his overall testosterone production.
And it gets even better when we look at the free testosterone. Remember, on day 1, he was starting below the normal range at 40.7. Well, by day 30, his free testosterone jumped significantly to 56.8. That brings him firmly back into a much healthier range. This was the second massive biological victory of the entire experiment.
So what's the final verdict here? The data definitively proves that discipline absolutely pays off. Despite the intense anxiety in week 1, the relationship friction, and those wild emotional swings from pure aggression to total exhaustion, the experiment proved his initial hypothesis. He harnessed his physical energy, boosted his hormone levels naturally, and completely rewired his baseline for discipline.
But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. Based on everything we've looked at today, is the biological boost of semen retention actually worth the extreme psychological friction and that loss of intimacy? Or is the real prize here simply mastering your own dopamine and proving that you are in control of your mind? Let that sit with you for a bit. Thanks for joining me for this analysis, and keep asking the big questions.